Good morning, beautiful people of the Center for Spiritual Living. And happy Mother's Day to you. Would you please, if you are a mother, stand up so we can adore you? And if you are a grandmother, won't you please remain standing? And if you are a great-grandmother, won't you remain standing? Thank you very much for being here with us this morning. And I know that there are some people who have to stand in the role of mother, whether or not they are biologically a mother or of the right biological gender. So we acknowledge the role of mothering as very important to the survival of the species. So thank you very much. And I appreciate Mother's Day so much because attendance just goes up. See, because moms want to come to service, you know. Dads want to go fishing. So I mentioned my gratitude for Mother's Day because that's what our theme is, practicing gratitude as a spiritual practice. I said I was very grateful to no longer be practicing forgiveness as a spiritual practice, but as I get into the practice of gratitude, I see it stirs up as much stuff. Beautifully so. But it's causing me to think about a whole lot. And our topic is this morning, thank God I'm well. So I turned to Wednesday, May 8, in the Practicing Gratitude booklet that we created to give away on First Wednesday. And, the practice is you and I are invited to make a list of 10 things that we are grateful for on each different day for different topics. So I'm thinking about preparing this message, I am well, and the first thing over here on Wednesday, it says, things in nature for which I'm grateful. So right quick, I write down pollen, because I'm not feeling it, right? You know what I'm talking about? My nose, and I wake up with my eyes, and then I don't learn a lesson. I walk around spring lake, and I put my face in the flowers. It's like, what? Of course. Oh my goodness. It's easy to complain about something like pollen, in China, in one of the counties in China, they've lost all of their pollinators, all of them, through the indiscriminate use of pesticides and through the over-harvesting of the honey. So they got no bees. There's been no bees in that county. And I'm not just talking the last couple of years. 20 years now, there hasn't been a bee in that county. Gone. And so what has to happen every year, armies of people have to get up on ladders, and they literally have brushes made out of chicken feathers, and they also use the material that is used for cigarette filters because of its consistency, and they dip it into the pollen. They literally get up on ladders and pollinate by hand the millions of blossoms if they are to survive the biological catastrophe of having no bee left in their county. Yeah. There's a bulletin, online bulletin on API News that tries to keep the world up to date with the state of the bee population here in our own country. And the bulletin for this March 2013, I'm not talking about old data. Right now, the bulletin says something is killing the bees of Maryland. And one of the beekeepers there, Stephen Christensen of Mount Washington, talks about how, I believe it's him, he talks about how 60% of the managed hives died last fall and through the summer and didn't come back, which is double the national standard. And he talks about having all these bees, and then he says, then they were just gone, and it took my breath away. Well, as I was reading this, I thought to me how important it is for me to appreciate things before they go away. See, the word appreciate means to raise in value, and I want to raise things in value in my estimation, so I treat them right and preserve them and don't take them for granted and treat them better, you know. Sure, it's easy to complain about things like pollen, you know. In fact, it's easy to complain about anything. You can go anywhere in the world and find something to complain about. We're talented in that regard. We know we travel in spiritual community a lot over here. In fact, we've got a trip to Bali coming up in January 3rd. We're going to Bali. And before we go, I gather all the travelers together and I sit them down in a room and I say to them, look, this is not a tour. This is not a corporate tour, right? This is a pilgrimage, a spiritual pilgrimage. So, rule number 1, no complaining. And yet, we get there and the complaints rise up, sometimes from me, you know, sometimes from, you know, like the beds are too hard, or the service wasn't up to scratch, or the food is too strange, or it's too inconvenient to this or to that. And it occurred to me that, you know, you don't even need to go to the other side of the world to do all of that complaining. Many of us do it right here at home, in familiar territory. I hear it coming out of me and my friends. You know, we never go anywhere interesting anymore, or there's nothing good to see on TV these days, or there's way too much pollen in the air, or I don't feel like making dinner tonight. And it occurred to me that the habit of complaining is just as easy to establish and practice as is the habit of giving thanks. When we do travel together in spiritual community, you know, we get to this point about 2/3 into the journey, you know, when you've just had enough of all the happiness and joy, and you're missing your bed and you're missing your cat and you don't care to take anybody's nonsense anymore. I call it hump day, when things are most likely to go wrong. So what we do is I call people into a circle, and we sit in a circle and we call forth expressions of gratitude and appreciation. As we just go around in an unstructured way, and people will say what they're grateful for. Maybe somebody helped carry a piece of luggage, or maybe somebody was just really grateful for something they saw, or maybe somebody's word of encouragement. And as we go around the room with these expressions of gratitude, like magic, it changes the room. And it is as if we are reacquainted with our resiliency, and we come back to the ability to cope with which we couldn't cope with before. It changes just like magic. So, Wednesday, the 8th, I wrote down things in nature for which I'm grateful. Pollen, bees, and our fragile air, and our precious water, and our amazing animal kingdom, and the miracle of photosynthesis, and the ability of oyster mushrooms to clean up oil spills, and full moons and what they do to us, and sunsets and the summer storms of my youth in Africa, and our oceans. I needed more than 10 lines. Kind of got into it, you know, and started to stir up feelings. And I read in Psychology Today that studies show that gratitude not only can be deliberately cultivated as a practice, but among those people who do take the time to develop, to cultivate gratitude as a practice, they demonstrate increased levels of well-being, happiness, and their practice also associates them with it shows them to be among a group of people who have more energy, more optimism, and most importantly, more empathy. This is a study in Dallas, Texas, and I think Davis, California. 2 universities did the same study to get a real good base of participants. And the way it worked was groups of people were assigned a task. The first group of people were given a journal, something like this, and asked just to keep record of events that took place in their lives from day to day. And they weren't specified to pay attention to good or bad, no qualifier, just keep a record of events, record keeping. The second group was invited to keep a record of unpleasant events that happened throughout the day, and just record keeping. And the third group was invited to keep a record of things for which they were grateful, just to make note of things for which they were grateful. So, of course, at the end of the study, as you can imagine, their whole lives were observed, how they interacted with other people and how they satisfied their own lives' goals. And it was found that the gratitude people demonstrated higher levels of alertness, enthusiasm, optimism. More importantly, they showed less signs of being depressed in general. It demonstrated less stress in their life and their ability to meet the challenges of life. Very importantly, were more inclined and more likely to help other people, and also took proactive steps towards satisfying their life's yearnings. Oh, compelling stuff. May 9th, Thursday, the list was, what do you appreciate about animals? So I sat down, because I want aliveness and more connection. I'm keeping to my list making. What do I appreciate about animals? Their incredible beauty, their innocence, their mystery, their eyes, their parenting skills, their incredible naturalness. And my thought went to the bees again, and how some swarms are trying to adapt. And then I thought about my cat and how I appreciate his silliness and his playfulness. And then I started to feel my heart go out in appreciation for the vulnerability of the animal kingdom. And making this list, I realized, wow, gratitude lists remind me, it helps reconnect with me with a whole bunch of stuff. 5 things at least came into prominence. My list making is reminding me of how awesome reality is. How tenderly beautiful it is by letting my awareness shift, the focus shift slowly to the awesome majesty of being. And the second thing I realize is that by practicing gratitude, it can turn a bad situation around. Like my relationship to pollen. Or the story I love to tell is how when I worked in Hollywood, I had a boss that was mean, that nobody liked, who was mean to everyone. And I worked with my prayer practitioner who said, you've got to find something to appreciate about him. And I said, it's not going to happen. And the prayer practitioner wouldn't let me off the hook and said, you've got to find something. And so I said, well, I like his shoes. And that's what I did. I would appreciate the fact that he had stylish, fabulous shoes. I didn't know that it would have any effect, and I'm not sure how it did, or whether I was the one who changed, but something changed, because people would comment later on. They would say, what is it about you that he doesn't talk to you in a mean-spirited way? And I didn't know when it happened, but I do attribute it to that. I think something changed in me. The third thing that these gratitude lists are doing for me is helping remind me of what is truly important. I start on the surface with these gratitude lists, but it leads me to deeper places. Like Saturday, May 11th, the question is, what do you appreciate about living in California? So, I just started on the surface. I love the people. I do. I love the nature of California. And, this is me, but I love the liberalism when it's there. And I love the diversity. And I love I love the positivity. And I love the reputation that California has. I do. And I love the goofiness. I love that we are the home of the hippie. I love it. And I love our cities, and I love our coasts, and I love the progress. But as I was writing this quick surface stuff, something started to scratch deeper and say, there are other reasons being sparked, other things that I appreciate more deeply more in my heart about living in California than what is coming through. And so I sat with it and I said, you know what? I appreciate so much about living in California. I appreciate that you and I can get any food of any culture from any country, anytime. I do. I don't take that for granted. That's miraculous. And I appreciate that for the most part, you and I can walk around at night without fear of being attacked. I do. And I appreciate that almost everyone I know, almost everyone, has a roof over their head. And I appreciate that the weather here is perfect all the time, 100% of the time, all the time. And I'm so grateful that I'm free to practice my religion. And I am so grateful that I am free in California to express myself and talk about my life in a way that is not welcome or permitted in other states. I appreciate so much about living in California. And I appreciate that people like Luther Burbank and John Steinbeck and Jack London and Christopher Isherwood and John Cage and Igor Stravinsky all thought it important to live here for a while. As I think about it, this making of the list, it just reminds me of what a blessing it is to be alive. And that's the fourth thing, to help me not take for granted. Practicing gratitude helps me not take for granted, because I can slip into complaining very easily, and I can slip into minimizing, marginalizing the things that have contributed, the people who have contributed to my life. And making the lists, it helps me to look deeper into a thing like I did with California. Not just the service, look deeper into something, and also try to identify the best and dwell on it. Like today is make a list about what you appreciate about mothers. And so I said, what I appreciate about the best that is in mothers, that's what I want to focus on, because there's so much. I wrote, I appreciate their humanness. I appreciate their gift of life, their endurance, their love. I appreciate their fierce loyalty. I appreciate their beauty. I appreciate their ability to push buttons. That is a miracle, right? And you know what? I also appreciate that they can see us. They look into our souls. And I appreciate the indispensable nature, their role in the survival of the species. I appreciate that. And I appreciate their generosity. And I just appreciate the fact of their existence. Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you and I ever said was thank you, it would be sufficient. I wanted to go back to the book by John Kralik that I talked about last week, so we can check in on his progress. This is the gentleman who set himself the task of writing 365 thank you notes, one a day for a year. See how it went for him. He had so much going wrong in his life, and I've been hoping for miracles for him. So chapter 10 is called Mediation. He says, by March, there had been no movement toward the resolution of my marital separation stalemate. Still, I was determined not to use the adversarial legal process to force an end to the marriage. I had seen and felt the damage this would cause when my first marriage ended. California's family law courts provide a forum where families can burn their bridges and their money, where they can express sentiments that take positions that will destroy their relationships with their children and with their children's well-being, and I didn't want to go there. So he was looking for a way to find his gratitude related to his ex, and he struggled in the way I struggled with my boss, because his heart was so broken and so hard. He couldn't find a way, a place, something to land on with authenticity to write a thank you note about. But he was so deep into the practice that he didn't want to let himself off the hook. So he waited and he observed. He looked until he could find the entry point, and then it came. It was his daughter's 16th birthday, and his ex-wife planned it around his daughter's desire and created a party that was really awesome, and he saw the opportunity to write a clean, sincere thank you note. And here it is. He said, "Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to make the arrangements for our daughter's party. It looked like a lot of fun, and I think she really appreciated having some control over the theme. The invitations were classy too." Now, the important part is not that things suddenly turned out better. He still had to go to arbitration. It was still difficult. He still didn't get his dreams manifested. But the important part is in the next sentences in the book. It says, "Whether this thank you note made a difference at all in the way my ex thought, I can't say. But something within me changed when I wrote it. The note made a difference to me." And that's it. We don't know what our notes will do in the world or our expressions of gratitude, but I think we can know what will happen to us when we find our true, authentic, grateful heart and land on it. We change. Look, thank you notes do make a difference in the world. I know they make a difference in my world. This past week, I've just got a flood of thank you notes. They just come pouring in, and I don't know what to do except to enjoy them. Dear Reverend Edward, while journaling this morning, I was struck with the idea to send notes of gratitude to everyone I am so grateful to have in my life. Thank you. That made a difference to me. That made a difference in my life. Reverend Edward, after the sermon you did last week, you should have been the first thank you I sent, but alas, you were not. I'm so happy to have heard your talk on Sunday. I haven't been to the center since you moved, and I'm so very, very happy to be back in your life and you in mine. What a joy. I can tell you that made a difference in my life. This one. Edward, thank you for being with us at the core team meeting this afternoon. And more so, thank you for reminding me of the power and peace of gratitude. Somebody wrote to thank me for doing my job, for what I'm paid to do. They wrote, "Thank you." I can tell you that made a difference to my life. This one, the card itself. Sometimes I'll think about something you said and I'll laugh. And then the other people choosing tomatoes at the grocery store will wonder what's so funny about that tomato. I can tell you that made a difference. It made a difference. This card, you really bring out the thank you card in me. Dear Edward, I loved your beautiful sermon on Sunday. I like the idea of writing thank you notes to people. I write them when I receive a gift. But this broadens the horizon. You are my first note because each Sunday you give me a gift with your sermons. And I can tell you put a lot of time and effort into each one. I can tell you that made a difference to my life. I went to a restaurant, and the maitre d' walked over and handed me a card saying, "Thank you for changing my life for the better," and then gave me a $75 gift certificate to give to someone else to pay it forward. I can tell you that made a difference in my life. This one. Edward, last Sunday, you asked that in gratitude we recall all we have received from the center. I have received so much from the center that I am making an extra contribution this week. Came with a big check. I can tell you, that made a big difference in my life. Yeah. Check to the center. I'll take it. The point is, find your grateful heart. Write a note and maybe change your life and the world. And to that end, next week, when you come to service, I'm going to have a blank thank you note for every single one of you. And I'm going to hold you to writing something to somebody right here. I'm going to lock the doors. I'm not going to lock the doors. Let us pray. So as we take this time to turn within and reconnect with the consciousness that was established in the opening prayer, that of being united in the power of creation itself, that which creates, nurtures, sustains, and gives rise to our very being, so that we may again identify ourselves as being at home in this magnificent universe. And in that way, our gratitude, our grateful heart opens up so that we are more inclined to notice, identify, give praise to, and worship that which is good and right and abidingly beautiful. And in this practice, we are not denying the world, neither are we blinded by what difficult work there might be to do. We are instead becoming wholeheartedly available to the rich complexity of all that life is. And this dedication to gratitude blesses not only us, but through the power of multiplication moves out into the world, touching all who come into its thought atmosphere and even those who do not. In this way today, we declare we are making a difference of joy in this world as we practice together to express our gratitude. Trusting that aspect of the universe that we call the law of mind to respond to us immediately, we expect, therefore, to be changed as a result of praying this way together. A little more attuned, a little more open, a little wiser, a little kinder. And together we say, and so it is. And with that, I invite you to breathe in deeply like this and sigh. Ah.